Welcome to another Glasgow Wants to Know. Tonight we have as our guests the two candidates for the mayor of Glasgow. This is an important election because there are many important decisions that are going to have to be made from the standpoint of the city government during the next 4 years. I do not envy either one of them. Whichever one wins is going to have a hard time because of the popularity of the present mayor. And whichever one wins is going to be compared to the existing mayor, so I don't envy either one of you. We'll start with you, Chief. Briefly give us your background by way of marriage and children and education.
Okay. My wife Connie and I reside on 113 Woods Drive, and we have 4 children. Karen, who is an elementary vice principal at Allen County Elementary School. Laura, who lives in Nashville, works for a consultant firm. Doug, the one and only son, works for Western Kentucky Gas. And Angela, who is in the Air Force, is stationed at the Space and Missile Center in LA. We have 2 grandchildren, 2 grandsons, Seth, who is 9, Cole, who is 3 months old, and we are expecting our first granddaughter on Election Day. So whether that will happen or not, I don't know. But I graduated from high school in 1968, went into the military. My education has been a long process throughout my life, taking classes through Eastern Kentucky University, Uhel, graduated from the program of Alternate Biblical Studies at Bethel College in McKenzie, Tennessee in the year 2000. And also have attended other classes, administrative classes and things like that throughout my life. So my education has been a long process throughout the years.
Walter Winn, your background.
Well, Uhel, I was born in Glasgow, attended public schools in Glasgow and graduated from Glasgow High School in 1961. I went to Vanderbilt, got my undergraduate degree in economics and business administration, and then continued there and got my law degree at Vanderbilt in 1968. At that time I came back here and began practicing law and have continued in law practice to this day. I have 4 children. My wife Winn and I had 4 children. She died last November. Winn is a graduate of Cumberland College and operates bulldozers in Louisville. Case is an environmental engineer and lives in Colorado. Elaine is in a PhD program at Hebrew Union College, and her area of studies are comparative Semitic languages, and she wants to be a college professor. With that background, she almost has to be. And Chuck is a freshman at UK. He's a presidential scholar there and enjoying his time at school. And I have no grandchildren, but I have 3 grand dogs, and that's all that I have, and that's basically my background.
Now, Chief, we all know that at the present time you are Chief of Police of the city. How long have you been working for the city?
Okay, I began as a patrol officer in August of 1972, and of course I just completed my 30 years as a police officer with the Glasgow Police Department, and I was made chief in November of 1995. For the past 7 years I've been chief.
Have you had any other occupation or worked any other place other than the city?
Well, I used to farm, and when my parents were living, I assisted them in the farm that they had, and I also myself rented some farms, and then in I guess about 1990 and 1991 I became a steady supply, pulpit supply for Clear Point Cumberland Presbyterian Church in Hart County in downtown Uhel, that's on 31E. And in the year 2000, after completing my education course, I was ordained and became the pastor of the Clear Point congregation. And I've been there since 1991, serving the church.
Walter Winn, your
Yeah.
background as far as work's concerned.
You'll
Occupation.
As I said, I've been in private law practice since 1968. During that time, I've been operating my own business, either as a sole proprietor or as a partner. Currently, I'm in partnership with Laura Lee Kreitz, a young attorney who came into the firm about the middle of May. In addition to that, I've been a director at what initially was Citizens Bank and Trust Company, now U.S. Bank, and I've served as a director or an advisory director for that institution since 1968. I've been on the board at T.J. Sampson Hospital since 1972, and been very much involved in all that's gone on in our hospital over the last 30 years, which is one of the things I'm probably most proud of as far as accomplishments. And but those are the major occupational or vocational things that I've done.
Chief, why do you want to be mayor?
Well, I contemplated, I guess, for about a year and whether or not I would run for the office of mayor. And of course, I was getting close to retirement as chief of police, and I thought the opportune time was right. Of course, Mayor Honeycutt is retiring. I want to see that Glasgow continues to grow and progress as we have in the years past. I think we've had a wonderful leadership with Mayor Honeycutt and the city council throughout the years, leadership throughout the community. And my main concern is that we continue to do what we are doing. The city is involved in a lot of issues and a lot of things that's going on now. The new Circle bypass, we're talking about Plaza Theater. The Renaissance Committee I think is doing a wonderful job, and I want to see that continue on, working to improve the downtown area and just things like that I hope that we will continue to do what we've been doing, because we have a new park that's coming into existence, and hopefully that will be developed, and hopefully new industry will come into Glasgow. And that's why we have grown throughout the years, because we've had new industries that have come into Glasgow. I want to see that progress continue, and I believe in good government, good leadership. You have to have it. We have had it. As you mentioned, I guess Walter Winn or whoever becomes mayor, I guess has some hard shoes to fill, so to speak. But I'm willing. I know Walter Winn is willing, and whoever the citizens of Glasgow elect. But I just want to continue what we're doing, and hopefully look into the future of the things that will lead our young people, our young children, into jobs, and that's what it's all about, is the future of Glasgow, and I want to be a part of that. I've been in city government for the past 30 years. I want to continue in city government to try to provide the same leadership and the same goals and ambitions that we've had all of these years.
Why do you want to be mayor, Walter Winn?
Well, I haven't thought about this for a year or two or three or four. As a matter of fact, I really didn't give it a lot of consideration until early January of this year. But I was really concerned at that time that the citizens of Glasgow would have a choice for the duties, the job of mayor. Someone who had a wide range of experience, someone who was qualified by both education and experience to handle the job. We had some good candidates in the primary. I have a good opponent in the general election. As I've said, Chief Pickett's done a good job as chief of police, and Mayor Honeycutt certainly has done a good job as our mayor and the council. But it's time for a change. This happens. Mayor Honeycutt's been in office for 17 years, and I think I felt we needed someone to look at city government from one end to the other with a fresh perspective. I felt like I could do that because like I say, I have a broad range of experience, both financial and budgeting, business, industrial development. All of these things I've been involved in over the last 30 years in my law practice and in my involvement in the community. And I felt like I could bring something to the table that none of the other candidates could bring, because at that point they were all involved for some period of time in city government. And I just felt like we needed someone to be able to look at everything with a fresh perspective. That doesn't mean that anything was done wrong. I talked to Mayor Honeycutt about this and told him I felt like this was an important issue, and I wasn't being critical of him. But anytime you do anything, one person for a certain way for a period of time, it doesn't hurt to have somebody to stop and say, let's look and see what we're doing right and continue those things, and what can be improved and do those things better. And that's something I think I can do. And that's basically why I decided to run.
Chief, have you made any decision about keeping the same personnel for the city, or changing certain positions in the personnel?
That question has been asked of me, and as I told someone the other day, they asked about a position, and I said to them, I said, well, first, my concern is with the election. And I think that is my main focus right now, is to focus upon becoming mayor of Glasgow through the election. And if I'm fortunate to do that, then I'll begin working on some of the areas of looking into the personnel. And if there are any changes, that has to come later or whatever. If there are changes, I will fill those positions with qualified people.
I hear that Settle is intending to retire.
Yes, that is my understanding. I've talked to Les, I guess, on several occasions, and he has expressed to me that he plans on retiring sometime next year.
Do you have any plans, or have you thought of anyone as a replacement for him?
Well, I have. I've thought about the city clerk. I've thought about the city attorney, the city treasurer. Again, I have some people in mind if that does come open. And again, if Les retires, and I assume that he will from what he indicates, then I will begin to look at those issues.
I am sure you have, Walter Winn, looked over the personnel of the city. Do you plan any changes if you are elected?
Uhel, I have, and I've said before in the primary, I didn't run to get rid of anybody. But the day after I announced, I heard Les was going to retire at the end of December. I went to talk to Les. I've known Les for years. He had a daughter who graduated with my oldest son from high school, and we've been friends a long time. And I told Les, his position, I think, is a key position in city government. I told him I would like for him to stay on, and at that point he agreed to stay on at least through August of 2003, and possibly longer than that, to provide a smooth transition from our current administration to the new administration. And I really appreciate, he cares about our city, and I think that's the reason he did that. And so I have committed to him that if he will stay, I want him to stay for a while. Now, when he leaves, I've not offered that job to anybody. I have again said publicly, I think on this program in the primary, that the next city clerk needs to be someone who has a strong background in accounting and or municipal administration. We're going to be facing the implementation of GASB 34, which is a new accounting system that's going to be imposed on cities. It has two primary aspects. One is putting the city on an accrual basis, and that's technical, and people like John Taylor and Bill Myers will be interested in that, and it's sort of dull for most people, but it's something that's going to have to be done. The other big aspect of that regulation is the city is going to have to, in effect, inventory and classify and depreciate its assets. And it's just a huge paper job. And I think that job is going to require someone who has a strong accounting background. I will spend the time from the time, if elected, from the time I take office, that year posting that job, trying to write a job description for that job, and getting qualified candidates to fill that job. But I've made no commitments to anyone.
For any position?
For any position.
And I take it the same is for you, Chief, based on what was said a moment ago.
There has been probably a commitment or two that I have talked to people. They are interested in the job. Again, I want qualified people who have been involved in finances, knows finances, and again, with the change that is apparently coming sooner or later, you need qualified people, and whomever and whenever Les retires or anybody else retires, we will seek out the best candidates that would be best for the job and would handle the job and do the job, and that's what I want to do.
And let me just, I'm going to look at every position. Now that doesn't mean I want to get rid of anybody, but I want to make sure we've got the right people in the right position in all of these things. And Chief Pickett has said at some point he's going to be retiring, so there's going to be a chief of police that will need to be named. They're always with attrition. You'll have to look at positions, but as far as committing to anyone, I've not done that. And I do want to get through the election. If I'm elected, then I'm going to have to begin to look at things like that.
Well, I think that's the main issue. We've got to get through the election, and that is my focus and concern right now. So,
Some of the people that I hear talking want to know whom would be, or who or whom would be your advisors in your administration. And by that, they understand, and I think both of you understand, that nobody, and I'm sure neither one of you would claim to know everything.
No, I sure don't.
And there are times that you're going to run into problems where you're going to need some advice from somebody that's more familiar with the questions that are involved than you are. And as I say, I've had people to ask me whom I think would be y'all's advisor. I have no idea, and I tell them I don't know. Now, I'll ask each one of you, and start with you, Chief,
Okay.
Who your advisors are, if any.
Well, I have thought about that, because like I've said before in the primary, I've never been a mayor before, and if fortunate enough to win the election, I'm going to be looking at people who have experience and knowledge. Hopefully Mayor Honeycutt will still be around, and I've thought about him of any help. But not only that, we have the Kentucky League of Cities that have advisors, and I know that Mayor Honeycutt and a lot of cities depend upon the Kentucky League of Cities for assistance or whatever. As far as locally, again, we've got several people who have been on the council for several years. Even now, I look to them for advice sometimes, or ideas, or suggestions, or help in any way. But like I say, the Kentucky League of Cities is out there, and that's why they're out there, to help the cities. And I think that any advice or any concerns or anything that I need to know, and that I would turn to them without doubt.
Walter Winn?
I've talked to Mayor Honeycutt, and I've told him that if I'm elected, I still want to seek his counsel, and I will do that. In addition, we have had two ladies, actually three ladies, that are leaving the council. Two of them were candidates for mayor. Jeannie Scalise did a good job on the council. There are areas that she worked in that I certainly would not hesitate to go to her to ask her advice or opinion about things. Sheila Oliver has certain qualifications that, you know, I would talk to her about things where she has been involved. But where I'm going to go for advice is primarily will be to the new council. You know, I want to work with the new council. I think there'll be some incumbents. There obviously will be 3 new faces, but I'm going to utilize them, I think maybe more than they've been utilized in the present administration. I want to revitalize the committee structure. I want to give the councilman, you know, duties, things to do, areas to work in. I want them to be on the front line doing things, and I'm going to take their advice. I'm also going to take the advice of the department heads. I remember talking to Debbie Jones one time, and I asked her a question, and her response was, well, I'll do what the mayor wants. And I said, Debbie, I want to know, you're head of the recreation department. I want to know what your vision is, what your plans are, and I want to, you know, look at that and us work together on that. And she said, well, I would appreciate that opportunity. So I'm going to be talking to the police chief and the fire chief and the head of the recreation department and the head of the street department, the manager of the landfill, and all of these people, because we've got some really outstanding city employees. I'm going to be talking to Billy Ray and Joe Austin at the plant board and the water company. I think, you know, I want not only to get their advice and counsel, but I want to open lines of communication. I think we need to talk more, to work together more, and do a better job in that area.
Chief, and I'm sure you are aware of or do know the answer to this question, how much or how many city services are provided to areas immediately outside the city limits?
Outside the city limits?
Yes.
Well, of course, the landfill that is located within the city, and of course, we get other counties, the out-of-county services that come into this city. Of course, we got the water company, we got cable, we got electric plant board now that goes out into the city. So there's a lot of entities that are, I guess, city operated that actually go out into the county. So, and that seems to continue to grow, because I know the cable electric plant board has gone out into the county now. So,
what do you do insofar as chief of police is concerned if police are needed outside the city limits but in adjoining territory?
Well, we have jurisdiction in the entire county, and if for some reason we are needed, it would have to be extreme emergency, and if the KSP, Kentucky State Police, or the Sheriff's Department requested us, then we would give them assistance. Very seldom do we ever go outside the city limits unless it's absolutely necessary, emergency, to back up a sheriff's deputy that may be totally by himself and going into a situation. Then we would provide him security and protection.
What I'm leading up to, there are 2 ways to annex territory.
Yes, sir.
To the city of. One is what I shall call simply by agreement, and the other is by an action of the council, where then there is an election held as to whether or not the people that in the territory in the territory which you wish to annex has a vote, and so forth. And as I understand it, virtually all of the annexation that has occurred recently is by agreement. Now, I'll start with you on this one, Walter Winn.
All right.
Would you be in favor of the council attempting to annex other portions of the city, regardless of whether you have somebody that's in agreement as to all of it?
This is a difficult area.
I know it is. That's the reason I'm asking it. And it's one you're going to have to confront.
Absolutely. If you look at the current city limits of Glasgow, there are parts of it that don't seem to make much sense. If you were talking in political subdivision, it looks like they've possibly been gerrymandered, and it's been done, I think, because there were people in certain areas that wanted to come in. I think the city has got to look at a more ordered structure. Let me tell you one problem that's come up because of the way we've taken people in. I've talked to Chief Ray about this. Fire substations need to be within a certain time limit of the outer city borders. We've expanded so far north that we are on just the borderline of that. It could affect our insurance rating, which could in effect be cause a rise in rates for city residents. We need to be careful about things like that, and we don't need to annex unless we look at all of the factors. There are some areas, in my view, that need to be filled in. As mayor, my first approach would be to work with Scott Young and the people in the planning and zoning areas to see if we could get agreements. Now, in the event in certain areas we could not, would I be in favor of the council taking action? If the circumstances justified it on the basis of the benefit to all of the people in Glasgow, then I might look at that. I would prefer to do it by agreement and by showing the people what the advantages would be of police protection, fire protection, water, garbage, any other things that we might be able to put into that area. I would hope to be able to encourage people to want to do it by agreement. But I'm not going to say, oh, I never do it. It's just like, I'm not going to say I never agree to condemnation if the circumstances were appropriate. But again, I think you need to make every effort to do it by agreement and voluntarily rather than taking the more drastic steps.
Chief?
Our city has grown throughout the years, and it is because land has been annexed into the city. And will that continue? Again, it's a very, I guess it's a good possibility that it could occur. I know we have one ideal park left, that land, of course, that is yet to be developed. Through the years, once hopefully that is developed, then there may be some other land that we may have to look at. I do agree with that. I think people should agree with coming within to the city limits. Sometimes that happens, sometimes maybe not, but most of the time I think it has happened. But when we continue to grow in land-wise, again, the services that we extend to our citizens will become, greater, more expense. So I think you really got to look at it, and again, look at the planning, look at what people want. How would it benefit us if we do annex some more property into the city? Again, our city is kind of chopped up. If you'll look at a map, you'll see that it's here, it's there, and it kind of goes around. But that's okay, because a portion of that land that was brought into the city was for the benefit of the city, and I think it has proved to be a benefit. So yes, I would agree that that we need agreement of the landowners, property owners, if it's a subdivision or whatever. But again, look at it as a whole, and look at the cost, as I said. Look at how it's going to really benefit us in the future.
I take it that it would be fair to say that as far as each one of you is concerned, if you thought it was beneficial to the city and so forth, and you could not get agreements, you would not be opposed to having and even recommending to the council that they try to annex by a legal process other than consent. Is that a fair statement for you?
Under the appropriate circumstances, as far as if it would benefit the entire city, we might have to look at that.
That does occur, and I do agree with that, because sometimes you had to do those things. And you're going to please some and please not some. But again, if it benefits the city and the residents of Glasgow, yes, I would.
Now, both of you, in ads and otherwise, have talked about budgeting. What is, Walter Winn, what is the basic reason for budgeting?
Well, there are two aspects to budgeting. One is you must make an attempt to determine what your revenues are going to be. And there is a process, a historic criteria that you can utilize. But number one, one of the most important things that you have to do is determine what your revenues are going to be. I cut out an article and I brought it with me. It was in the Lexington paper that says revenue shortfall lowers state credit rating. This was in the Lexington Herald Leader on October the 10th. They've done a poor job anticipating what their revenues were going to be. And this is the third year that they've had a deficit. They have done away with their what they call their rainy day fund, or what we would call our fund surpluses, and the state's in a difficult position. So one aspect of budgeting is making sure that you know what your revenues are going to be. The other aspect of budgeting is looking at what your expenditures need to be. And this is what, determining what your salaries are going to be and so on and so forth. I think budgeting for the city over the next 2 to 3 years is going to be critical. If you read the financial papers, earlier this year we acknowledged we were in a recession nationally. They said at first it would be over by December. Now everything you read says, well, it may go on through 2003 and into 2004. So I think it's imperative that the city look at what its revenues might be and have a plan in the event that we have a double dip recession or a triple dip recession, and in the event that it should make some difference in Glasgow, that we anticipate what our revenues are going to be and make sure we have adequate surpluses. The other thing on the expenditure side, I want to take a fresh look at expenditures from top to bottom, and if there's a way that we can save money, I want to do that. Not on the backs of city employees. I'm not in favor of cutting any benefits or cutting any salaries. But I have talked to employees in almost every department, and without exception, they say there are things that we could do to make the city run more efficiently. So because of that, I think budget is terribly important.
Well, apparently both of you think so, because both
definitely.
of you have been talking about it in ads.
Let me finish two things. I've read Chief Pickett's ads. I've read his thing. He has experience in budgeting for one department, and his experience mainly is on the expenditure side. I've had experience primarily through the hospital with a budget 4 times the size of the city's, with 4 times as many employees, having to anticipate both the revenues and the expenditures and allocating those expenditures and prioritizing those expenditures among all of the various departments in an organization that size. And that's one of the things that I think distinguishes my budgeting experience from Chief Pickett's budgeting experience.
Chief, it's your turn.
Okay. Again, I have been administrator for the past 7 years, and I do my budget, and of course my budget usually is over $2.1, $2, $3 million a year. Looking at a budget, we just don't sit down just a bunch of figures and go with that. Of course, we have the mayor, we have the council, the finance committee that looks at this. A budget is very important. You do have to have revenues that are coming within the city. You know, right now, I think we're good. We stand at a point that everything is okay right now. But as the economy continues to drag down to some degree, and again, 2, 3, 4 years down the road, we don't know what to expect. We have to look at our revenues. We got to look at what is always coming within the city itself, and again, you don't go out and buy just because you've got the money. I have a budget, but for these past 7 years, I have been able to turn money back in to the general fund because I had a dollar figure. Of course, what Mr. Davis may not understand, we do accounts, and throughout the year, I am constantly looking at each account, what we're buying, what we're not buying, what we need, what we don't need, and I do a percentage month by month, and to see, you know, is this budget or this amount, is it going to last until the end of the fiscal year? And I think with all of that, you look at it as a whole, from whether it's the police department or the street department, or recreation department, or whatever. You have to look at that again. But again, you know, our main concern is look at the revenue. If everything goes as continues, we'll be fine. If it don't, then we're going to have to look at it at a different level. Hold back. You can save. That's a fact. I have been able to save the city of Glasgow for the past 7 years, and a lot of things that were normally bought, but I cut back on them. And because of that, I feel like that I do have a part and have knowledge about administration.
Have you ever proposed a budget for your unit and then had it, the proposal cut by the finance officers and officials of the city, and you actually got less in the city budget than you had proposed for your department? Has that happened?
Yes, sir, that has happened. Not too often. This year's budget went smooth because I was able to cut back in some of the accounts that was several $1,000s. And again, as I look at each account, and if I can save, or if I'm not going to use it, I don't put that dollar amount back in there because that's not fair to the mayor, the council, or the citizens of Glasgow saying we've got this figured. So I do cut back, and I have been not something that would affect or take away, or maybe a few $1,000s, maybe cut back to some degree. But I was able to manage it. I did manage it, and at the end of the fiscal year, it worked out just fine. So I guess by the mayor or the finance committee or whoever was cutting it, they knew what they were doing, and I had no problem with it. I respected that, and I was able again to manage that.
Both of you have talked here about the economy and so forth, and possible and maybe even probable shortfalls. And in the event that as a result you had a shortfall in the anticipation of your city revenues and you had to cut somewhere, what services would you propose to cut first?
Well, you know,
It's a hard question. I understand that.
sure it is, and you're asking people to answer questions without the benefit of having been able to sit down and immerse themselves in all of the facts and circumstances at the time. Let me tell you what, if I'm elected, one of the first things that I'm going to do, working with the city clerk and the city treasurer, is to try to put together a plan. The what if there should be a shortfall. What if Donnelly, for instance, had to lay off 600 people? What if the automotive industry went down and the plants here connected with the automotive industry cut back, laid off people? So the first thing we need to do is look at that. In addition to that, we have right now adequate surpluses. If you compare it to the state, you could call it our rainy day fund. I think it's on the low side of adequate. If I looked at the budget this year, Our general fund surplus started out at about $3 million. At the end of this year, it's projected to be $1.7 million. There is some spending in there that took that down.
Well, my question is not too clear, and wasn't too clear. And basically what I'm getting at, in the event you've got a shortfall and you have to cut, are you going to cut departments evenly, or are you going to make choices as to where to cut?
You're going to have to make choices, and you're going to have to choose the least essential services to cut first. You can't do away with police protection. You can't do away with fire protection. Now, it may be that you have to cut some across the board, but you've got to maintain, to have a safe community, you've got to maintain adequate police protection and adequate fire protection. Those are essential things. You could put off blacktopping a street. You can't put off putting out a fire. And so you're going to have to look at, if you have to cut, you have to cut in the area that's least essential first. But that doesn't mean that you wouldn't cut to some degree, even in the police department and the fire department, if you could do it without hurting essential services.
Chief, it's your turn.
Again, we can't predict the future. We can't predict what the economy will be in 5 years, 10 years, or whatever. I remember back in the early 80s, and a lot of employees got a little scared because the economy did worsen, and they were talking laying off employees. That would be my very last resort of laying off any employees. Again, you don't know what to expect, but again, we had to continue to provide their services, and of course, police and fire are, I think, is a priority to a lot of their services. But again, as far as employees, that would be my last resort. But again, you have to, when those things come, you can cut back. Because I remember in the early 80s when we were dealing with this, that we cut back on a lot of things. And because of that, not so much taking away, but taking away services or anything like that, but maybe buying things or not buying things that we had predicted in the budget or whatever, but backing out of them and not doing that. So you can do that. You have to do it very cautiously and carefully, but look at some of the monies that are being spent and cut back on them. If it's not needed, it's not needed. And I think by that, if we were faced with a situation like that, I think there's a lot of ways that you can cut back without first cutting employees. And again, that would be my last resort.
And I agree with that. You know, I think, again, my example was we don't pave a street. That doesn't cut employees. That means we don't pay a paving company to come in and pave a street.
Well, now let's discuss some subjects that are probably going to come up during the next 4 years. One of which is, what are you going to do with the Liberty Street property? I'll give you the first chance at that one, Chief.
Well, Walter Winn and I attended a Renaissance Committee meeting this morning, and of course the Renaissance Committee has done a wonderful job, and I think they began in 1999, but and they continue to do a good job. And of course, not only the Liberty Street, but some other areas of the city, especially in the downtown area, that they've got grant monies that has been provided, is being provided. Of course, the high school supposedly, hopefully will be turned into maybe an apartment for people who are 55 years and older. The middle section of the school, of course, is the recreation department is taking charge of that, and they're doing some renovation in the old band room, the gym down there. That's going to be one of the things I like about it. They're going to turn it into a exercise room for city employees. So, and the old elementary part, it could be torn down or it could be made into apartments too, but yet I guess that is yet to be decided. What the Renaissance Committee is doing and city leaders are doing are trying to preserve that Liberty Street campus. I want them to do that. I think we should do that, and I would see that will continue to.
How are you going to finance it?
Well, again, there are grants that have been provided. We will continue to look into grants as pretty much right now, as far as the city being involved with using a lot of money. If I understood the mayor right, that's probably not correct. But again, we had to use caution to before we spend any of the city's money. But again, there are grant monies out there, and if they can be provided, that's our first step. Go with them and try to do as much as we can up there with the money that we can get from state, federal, or whatever.
Walter Winn, what do you think should be done about the Liberty Street property?
I feel like it should be renovated. I think the basic structure is sound. They're working with a developer, Holly Wiedemann. I cut an article out of the Lexington paper several months ago, that project that she's done in Midway. There, as the chief says, there's grant money involved. In this particular project, there was a waiting list for people to come in and rent these units. It's primarily for people 55 and older. And if you look at what they did there, there's a beautiful exterior and interior in these apartments. I think the thing has got a great potential. I had suggested to the recreation department when Western announced it was leaving that they ought to look at the music hall building, the middle building, and they are doing that. I think that's going to be a good use for that. As I told the Renaissance Committee this morning, I'm in favor of eating the blacktop off of Ralph Hammer Field and turning that back into green space for the kids in the neighborhood. The elementary building, at this point, there's not a plan. If elected, one of the first things that I want to do in the first 100 days is to meet with the Renaissance Committee and see if we can't come up with at least a direction for that building and move ahead trying to find something to do. There are all kinds of possibilities. I've even suggested...
I understand there's all kinds of possibilities. What I'm driving at again is not only what you're going to do with them, but how you're going to finance them. And both of you keep talking about grants. Now, the federal government is short of money. The state hadn't even made a budget. They're short of money. And grants are going to be less and less. I don't think there's any doubt about that. There are going to be fewer grants in the next few years. If that is correct, how are you going to finance that?
Depends on what.
The same thing for Plaza Theater, theater and the property down there. I can't think of Delville Greer property and things of that nature. If these grants don't come through, how are you going to finance them?
You've raised a valid question. The Plaza Theater, they have a $500,000 grant committed, another $150,000 to $300,000 in grants essentially committed. If those grants don't come through, the council and the mayor have committed to a project at this point. I think we will have to follow through on that project. I agree with you. I think grants are going to become less and less. The elementary building at Liberty Street, we may have to look at other uses for that facility. I don't want to see it torn down. One of the things that I've suggested as something I want to at least throw on the table is the possibility of moving the police department up there. They are stuffed in. They've been stuffed in their offices ever since Clifton Duncan was there. They need more space. They don't have any parking space. The street is always cluttered, and if the bank ever runs them out of their lot, they don't have any place to park. So that is a possibility, and if you put the police department up there, you could probably do it with limited renovation. There are things that a lady came to a meeting at Liberty Street School who was in charge of I think a spouse abuse center. That center had been kicked out of the life skills building and they needed a place, and I can't think of a better place for abused spouses to go. That would be right next to a police station.
I don't think there's any doubt that there are hundreds of uses that could be made of the property. My question is, and I think you all have answered it about the best you can, is how you going to finance it?
Well, let me tell you what I'd do. As soon as that problem came up, I would go to Uhel Barrickman and ask his advice.
I'm afraid you wouldn't get very good advice. Chief?
Well, monies had to be available. We know that. And again, as you said, grants, I know from my own standpoint, some of the grants that I have got in past, I can't get them no more. That may be a very possibility. Sometimes you have to come to a halt on several things. If you come to a halt, you come to a halt. If there's no money, if you go to the grocery store and you want to buy something, you have $5, you can only buy $5 worth. And you can't buy any other thing beyond that. So if there's no money there, what can you do? You can't do nothing.
The next mayor's going to have to make some hard decisions, and
Yeah.
we understand that. I think Chief Pickett
Yes.
understands that. The last 17 years, it's been relatively easy. It isn't. It very well may not be relatively easy the next 4 or 5 years, and you're absolutely right. It's going to be a challenge.
If I'm elected, I will not go in there and just start throwing money left and right and buying this and buying that, because I haven't done that in my present job, and I sure won't do it as mayor. But again, you have to be conservative to some degree, and you just don't continue to spend. You got to stop and look at it a lot of times.
Well, I think that it is definitely going to be a problem. If you don't get the necessary grants, are you going to raise taxes in order to take care of these projects such as Liberty Street, or are you just going to let them sit there and deteriorate?
Well, you want to answer to that? Or
Yes, I do.
I am absolutely opposed to raising taxes, except as if we're in just desperate situation. In the primary, I hope someday, maybe in my 4th year, to even look at some tax relief. But and I'm going to assume that the scenario is not going to be as bleak as you indicate that it might be. I realize it may be that bleak, but I absolutely don't want to raise taxes. Let me give you an example. The soccer complex, which I favor, we signed a contract to do work before we got a grant. We had applied for a grant, we meaning the group of entities. I'm not sure that if I had been doing that I wouldn't, when the grant didn't come through, I would have at least gotten those groups back together and said, do we want to go ahead at this point, or do we want to postpone this for a year or 2 years? I don't think there's anything wrong with postponing something if you don't have the funds to do it. I think that's, as a matter of fact, I think that's reasonable, and I think it's prudent fiscal management. We didn't do that, and the entities had to come up with additional cash. That was very hard for the city school board. It was probably hard for the county. I think sometimes you've got to make hard decisions. That's what a mayor is elected for. And sometimes you can't do everything you want to do, and sometimes you can't do it as quick as you want to do it. I learned that from Glenn Joyner at the hospital. Glenn was an outstanding administrator. Dwayne Moss is a good administrator. But I learned from Glenn that sometimes you have to wait a little bit, and that's frustrating, but it's something that has to be done.
Chief?
Well, as a politician, you never say you're going to raise taxes.
That's right.
That is the wrong thing to say. But truthfully, I say no. That does not enter my mind of raising taxes. Again, you got to look at what's going to benefit the city itself, its citizens, before you would even consider raising taxes. And again, that's not my thinking whatsoever. Don't even come close to it. But again, a lot of the issues or a lot of the projects or a lot of the things that might occur, as I said a moment ago, if there's no money, there's no money. And you look at what you got to provide the very best for the citizens and maybe eliminate some things. And again, we have a lot of things going on right now, and we have a lot of promises of monies that we're going to get. But as you said, federal, state, again, the state has not even passed a budget yet. And we've had it good in Glasgow. We've had good leadership. We've got money. Will that continue? It's going to take strong leadership that will provide the leadership that is needed, that we don't just waste. And I don't think we have wasted. I think the citizens of Glasgow are benefiting from a lot of the great things that have happened within the city. And again, taxes again is not my number one thing. It doesn't enter my mind, as I said, because we don't need to do that. But we'll continue on as is, and if we come to those hard spot in the road, so to speak, we'll look at it and go from there with it.
Now then, there have been some suggestions from time to time about various means of controlling traffic problems in the town. And I think both of you must admit that there are traffic problems. You got any comment to make, Walter Winn, about that?
I think, yes, we do have traffic problems. If you think they're bad, though, go to Lexington.
Yeah.
Try to drive around there. We've got cruising problems. People have complained about the square. Well, what's on the square is on the square. It doesn't do any good to complain about it. That'll be alleviated to some degree if we get the trucks off, and that'll be done when the circle bypass is finished. When that gets done, if the state comes up with the money to do it. I'm going to leave it to the chief. If I'm elected mayor, the first thing I'm going to do about traffic problems? I'm going to call the chief of police and say, straighten out the traffic problems. That's your job.
Well, are you telling me that if you elected mayor, he's still going to be the chief?
Well,
is that what you're telling me?
I'm not telling you anything. I'm just saying whoever the chief is, Chief Pickett has said he's going to retire, okay? I don't know when he's going to retire, but whoever is down there on January the 2nd, I'm going to make a note that Uhel Barrickman wants me to call the chief of police on January the 2nd if I'm elected and work out the traffic problems, and that's exactly what I'm going to do.
When you talk about the square, I lived in Glasgow and Barrickman all my life, and I remember in younger years, the traffic around the square was a problem then. It's a problem now. I don't think it will ever cease. One thing I think will benefit and will help is the new circle bypass, and we know that. And that is going to take a lot of the truck traffic away from the square, because all the hub comes into the square. And we have tractor trailers coming through the square. And I remember I stopped somebody a while back, had this big tank. I don't know what he was going to do with it. And he didn't know which way to go or whatever, and I told him I didn't want to see him on the square anymore, or something like that. But anyway, the new circle bypass, and we have created a lot of new streets in the last few years, which has eliminated and taken away a lot of the traffic. If that had not been done, it would even be worse than what it is today. You go down 31E bypass in the evening or the morning, and you think you're in some big city, because we have a lot of people that commute from this town day in and day out. And we have seen an increase in traffic. We will continue to see an increase in traffic. The reason why, the population is growing. You go by any home, you'll see 3 or 4 cars parked there. Each family member has a car. So it has increased, and so will continue to be a problem.
Gentlemen, you've both done real well. I appreciate your answering my questions, and I wish good luck to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barrell.